Would you mind explaining Denali? Like, it's a pretty big deal in general.
Yeah, it's the highest peak in North America. It's a little over 20,000 feet, so roughly 6,000 meters or so. And it's heavily glaciated. It's normally climbed from the south, and people fly in. There's about a 50 or so mile flight that comes in from the closest little town of Talkeetna and lands people with skis on the plains, lands them on the glacier. And they disembark there. And then it's typically, 3-week climb to go up and down. And that's by far the most popular way. Well, we didn't want to do it the most popular way. We had to have this was part of our same rebellious streak. We wanted to do it from the other side, and it doesn't get climbed. I mean, I think only 2 or 3, even still, only a handful of parties, just 2 or 3 parties a year climb from the north because it's logistically more difficult. But in our case, we didn't have the money to fly in on the glacier. So we drove to the north side, and then it's I don't remember, probably 25, 30 miles across mosquito-infested, boggy, wet tundra, with huge packs, 100+ pound packs. Before we got on then we were able to get on the glacier, and then we skied from there up the glacier, and we climbed. There's 2 summits on Denali, or now call it Denali because that's the way everyone knows it. There's the north and the south summit. And so the first day we climbed the south summit, which is the highest. And then all of us thought, well, we really can't go home without tagging the other summit too. So we went over and climbed that one as well. And then we skied all the way back down with all of our gear, and then, hiked all the way back out. And it does involve the crossing of the McKinley River, which is a raging torrent. When we first went across, in early June, the water was already almost chest deep in some spots, and the river is almost a mile wide. And there are sandbars in a few spots that you could climb up onto and stop shivering, because this water's only been liquid for a few hours. It's coming right off the glacier. And but on the way out, it was quite epic getting back across, because by then it's July, and so the water had the melting is much more extensive, and was pretty risky, pretty touch and go actually getting across that later in the year.
I love how you said it was pretty epic. It was pretty dangerous.
Yeah, and then then we drove all the way back to Boulder.
Wow, crazy! And how many, like, at that point? So how long did that whole trip take you, minus the driving? So from
I think we were on the mountain about 3 weeks or so. I think something like that.
Most people are taking 3 weeks from the plane to do one, and you guys crossed through the bog, over the river, up Double Peak, and back.
Yeah. And the drive, I think, probably took us probably close to that long in this old Land Rover.
Wow. And so Matt, how many people had done it from that side at that point? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's not difficult from that side. Maybe it's slightly more technically difficult. And the glaciers are a little harder to navigate because some of the crevasses are a little bigger on that side. But it's not because of the technical challenge. I think it's more the fact that it's a little more remote. That was the route of the first ascent, actually. It's often called the sourdough route, because the sourdough was the name given to early the pioneers and miners that were in Alaska in the 1800s. And the mountain was climbed as a bet by these miners or these sourdoughs, I should say, who through a telescope could see the mountain from Fairbanks, which is quite a bit further north. And probably the little alcohol was involved, and they said, well, we're going to go climb that thing. And sure enough, they did. They dog sledded in, and they took dog sleds quite high on the mountain, and climbed it. They carried a 20-foot spruce tree without the limbs, just this trunk, carried it up there and planted it on the north summit. And they knew that the south summit was higher, but the north summit, you can't see the south summit from Fairbanks. So they planted the pole on the north summit so that when they got back there, they could, prove to their buddies in the bar that they had actually climbed it. And then, so it's quite a story. It's a very Alaskan kind of thing to do.